a better future. With agriculture, we can nurture the economy. Raise up the GDP, more jobs for you and me. Soil and water, our primary commodity. Farming should be the focus. Let's lead the world. Fighting a battle in my boots and my cutlass for the youth them. For tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Nakaisala. Wins Madix. Wins Madix. Wins Madix. Wins Madix. Bakouan wete ba moun plen la yo manja kite la vi. Appreciye sa yo ka fe kon yo apami nou jodi. La te mouve ba bien non nou ka konstipe moun evi. Pour nous connaître, pour nous fait pour nous tout ça bénéfice. For only wonders you done for us, Lord, spreading the culture all over the world. For all the good things that you done for God, that's why we thanking you. We thanking you, brother. Aja no mundo sou passar que chare eu põe e esse. Por no comer qual eu arrumo marca das music. All the gender to fix right with them see you. Vivian all the sex I want to pass you. You pass it to the boy and the music move. Mais attends, je ne sais que la chaîne. Si pas que va dire ce qui a poussé. For all the wonders you done for us, son, spreading the culture all over the world. For all the good things that you done for God, that's why we thanking you. We thanking you, brother.
Pleasant morning, Dominica. Good morning, Eastern Caribbean. Welcome to another Creole Heartbeat program. We are live in the studios of the big station Q95 FM. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. And today we'll be delving into a very important topic. One sometimes we just take for granted, but we need to continue the education. And that's the topic of copyright. And we have the expert himself who has done so much work in really getting us acquainted with the laws, the regulations, what is copyright itself. We will be spending an hour with Mark Murray, McAfee Murray, a stalwart in the music business, music industry in Dominica. And he'll actually dissect for us what is copyright and the various issues around copyright. We are also live on Q95 Facebook page in case you want to view what's taking place live. And also you can send in your comments also on Q95 YouTube channel. Let's say good morning to Mr. Mark Murray. Good morning, Sakafet, Sakafet.
Ben voilà quoi. Nous actuellement on est au question avant nous commencer à mais café c'est en créole ou bien en
Le café c'est en anglais pour ce monde
Okay,
là comprendre tout ça
alright.
nous garder parce que nous voulons sauter tout ce monde là tout à tout Dominique même qu'à comprendre ça nous garder.
Ouais, OK.
Parce que c'est important pour de continuer le travail là, pour de continuer à éduquer yo à ce ça qui a passé. So we will do it in English, Mr. Mark Murray, and off and
Okay,
on we can
alright.
just dive into a little Creole because of we are both Creole 100%. So once again, good morning to you. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm okay. Yeah.
And how is Chez Ophelia first and then La Grande Dame?
Well, Sheofil is preparing to receive some clients in July, which is next week.
Yes, and that is for the boat. The boat.
No, not the
Okay.
boat people.
Normal.
You know,
Normal.
in July, it's vacancy time in the French West
grande
Indies.
vacances,
Everybody
grande
starts between July and August. That's when we get most tourists coming from the French West Indies. So,
La
yeah.
Grande Vacances.
Right.
Okay, Mark, we're going to delve into the topic of copyright, and you have been instrumental for really educating us on this particular subject. How are we, even before we delve into what is copyright, are we cognizant of what is copyright in Dominica? Are we even interested in finding out about copyright in Dominica? to your
Yes.
opinion?
So yeah, quite a few people are interested, except
Mm-hmm.
that the knowledge or the people who ought to have the knowledge and to advise them, which is basically lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
don't have much expertise in the area. And then if you want to know how and why I get involved in that, my studies in school is actually in economics, agricultural economics, to be more precise. But when Ophelia made her first record, I was talking with Gordon and so on there, and I realized from what he said, and then he had a book as well, This Business of Music, that was published by Billboard magazine, which people might know. Those people who are in the business one way or the other would know. Billboard magazine is the big magazine that talks about the business of music for people in the music business. So they also publish books, etc. And he had this book that was titled This Business of Music.
Mm-hmm.
So I read it. And I realized, oh, music business is not what I thought.
Yeah.
Music business actually is copyright business.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you want to be in it, you better find out how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So I set about to acquire the knowledge, simply read. I like to read, so I read everything I could read, and then I spoke with people who knew better than me, and so on, and I expanded my knowledge.
Absolutely. What is copyright?
Well, copyright is the right that is given to a person who is called an author in the first case, who creates what is called copyright works. So you have copyright for books and all kinds of writings. For example, the people who work in the government office and write these memos to one another and so on. All these things are protected by copyright. And then music is one of those things that is protected by copyright. And that's the one I think people are more interested in Dominica. They think that copyright is about music alone. It's not. It's about also about computer programs. In point of fact, the law says that computer programs are literature. So if you read the Dominica Copyright Act, you will see very few references to computer programs because everything that's said about literature includes computer programming, computer programs. So computer program is a form of literature and it's protected by copyright law. Yes.
Absolutely. And let's delve into the performing musicians,
Musicians,
because
right.
this is possibly one of the areas that it is most important for us as we trying to delve in between, how to navigate through actually making some money. How are we actually utilizing the music here in Dominica? Are we understanding that who owns some of this music? Let's deal with the musicians and music first.
Okay, let's not, well, let me deal with musicians. The person who has copyright is the person who has created the music, not the person who plays the music. That's a different kind of right that person has. So copyright law essentially set out to protect the creators of music. For example, there are two songs that are pretty popular in Dominica here that Ophelia sings, or three, I'd say, or maybe four. I'll tell you about them. Mashe kontie, chebete tu hoale. The owner of the copyright in that song there is me.
Yeah.
Because I wrote it. So too is the song Moi kai reste ici. I wrote that as well. Chante-moi, doudou, une chanson d'amour. The owner of the copyright in that song is Gordon Henderson. He wrote it. L'amour, gardez devant, toujours là. The owner of the copyright in that song is Simon Girard in Martinique. Ophelia also sings the song Dingole, Dingole, The owner of the copyright in that song is Mighty Shadow.
Mighty Shadow,
Otherwise known as Winston Bale.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's these people who have copyright. People who perform music have rights as well, but they're not considered copyright. They're considered neighboring rights or related rights, rights that are similar to copyright. So you have to separate these rules. Because sometimes one person has all the rules.
Yeah.
Okay, because you can be the record producer, in which case you will own rights in the record production. You can play on the recording yourself if you can play. So you will be the performer. Matter of fact, nowadays you can be the sole performer. You can play everything, lock, stock, and barrel, and sing and everything. So there'll be only one performer involved in that, and you can write the song, in which case you will be the sole owner of the copyright in the song. So when we're talking about all these rights, we have to distinguish who owns which right and who can give permission or not give permission for use
Material.
of these music.
Let's take Calypso, for instance, in
Sure.
Dominica. And we know there are writers, the
Yes.
Pat Aarons, the Ian Jacksons, Tim Durant,
Mhm.
and there are also performers who are
Right.
the singers or the Calypsonians themselves.
Right.
Just break it down for us how it works.
Okay. Let's take Pat Aaron.
Mm.
Pat Aaron's been writing songs quite a long time when he was in Naked
Naked
Feet
Feet,
and
yeah.
so on and so forth. Then he moved on to writing songs for Calypso,
Yeah.
writing Calypso songs. And then he also decided, well, since he sings, writes songs and so on, he has been on stage since in Naked Feet days and so on. There, he can, in fact, sing his own song.
Yeah.
Okay, so he participated in the competition many times. I remember one of the interesting songs that he wrote that and sang was a song about Eugenia Child's
Yeah.
Mamo, I think was the title of the song.
Mhm.
However, he also wrote songs for other persons.
Mhm.
And he, Pat, never won the competition.
Yeah.
But the people who were singing his songs won the competition and beat him singing his song
songs.
in the competition because they were better performers than him.
Yeah.
But he was a better writer
Writer.
than they were. Therefore, he wrote songs and they sang it. And then Pat came to the conclusion, but I don't know how he came to the conclusion, but anyway, he decided that his skill was in writing. And therefore, he removed himself from the stage as a performer and concentrated just on writing. So he owns the copyright in the songs that he has written.
All the songs.
All the songs that he has written. Yes, it including those who used to be sung by Hurricane. Now Dye sings a lot of his songs, plus other people.
Daryl
because,
Bob and
yeah,
so.
yeah. So he owns the copyright in all these songs.
In this matrix, does the performer or the Calypsonian in that matrix have any rights to the song?
Yes. The rights the performer will have is the right to protect his performance on the stage. For example, you cannot take his picture on stage without his permission because the law says you cannot fix the performer's live performance without authorization. So that would include taking a picture with your camera, your cell phone, or whatever it is, or your video phone that will be fixing his performance, as well as just recording the audio by itself. And when it says performer, it actually means everybody on the stage. So the fella playing the cowbell at the back who nobody sees or whatever, his performance is also protected.
Well, let's take it to the level of the writer, which is Patty Run, swinging stars who performs the calypsos at
Right.
let's say the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and then the calypsonian. Does the band itself have some rights to the
Yes,
performance
that's
of the
what I'm
song?
saying because the band, every person in the band is a performer.
Yeah.
Yes, so those rights I told you about, they're taking the picture of the person there.
Or any ordinary person trying. I know
Ordinary.
I see you have a very important call,
Right.
but this is Mark Murray. We have a very special and very important program where we are dealing with copyrights. And Mark Murray, you can just mute the mic for Mark. Mike for Mark Murray. So we are here dealing with copyrights, and like we said, we'll just delve into the area of dissecting what happens in Calypso, where we have several writers, performers, and the various rights that they own to the material that they actually perform. So, like we said, like for instance, we took an example of Pat Aaron. All the songs that Pat Aaron wrote is his property. It belongs to him. And then let's say Dice, a Bob, or a Hurricane who performs the songs would have performing
Right.
rights.
Performance rights. Right.
Performance rights.
Yes.
And which would mean while they are performing the song, if you take out any photographs or any videos, live videos,
Or broadcast
or
it.
broadcasting, right? So let's bring it down to to the other sector. Um, Radio stations doing live broadcasts of that same show.
Yeah, they have to get permission.
They have to get permission from who? For instance, let's say
Well, let's.
Q95. Let's take finals.
Yeah.
The finals, grand finals is on, and at the Windsor Park Sports Stadium. We know that all the sounds that are written by, let's say, Part or Ian Jackson belongs to them. Now the performers or the Calypsonians and the band have performing rights. Now the radio station who wants to carry that particular finals.
Okay, here's what the radio station should do. The radio station should ask the performers, to say the Calypsonian as well as the band. For example, the band manager who is authorized, they have to get a proper authorization in writing, which they can always do among themselves to give permission or not give permission. And if you give permission, they can put the conditions. For example, we want $100 if you're going to broadcast our performance. Yes? So they could say that to the radio station. And the manager, let's say the manager is authorized to do that for all the people who are in the band. He would get the $100 and they would determine how they split it up among themselves.
In our instance, let's say in Dominica, where the Calypso Association
Doesn't matter.
Really is do they have rights themselves? The Calypso Association,
Yes, Calypso Association has rights because they own the show.
the show, yeah,
Okay, which means, and they own the gates. More importantly,
the gate.
the gate is controlled by them. So they are the ones who allow people to come in, and then they could put conditions on which you can come in.
Yeah, but
Okay.
then do they have the rights to
give permission.
let's say, to the radio station to broadcast the show?
No,
They can't.
unless they arrange in advance that the performers transfer those rights to them.
To them, okay.
And they can always transfer it to them for in exchange for a fee.
Yeah.
So instead of dealing with the radio station directly, the radio station deals with the Calypso Association. The Calypso Association has acquired the rights of the performers, so they now can license it to the radio station.
Okay. Let's deal with songs, recorded songs. And
Okay.
Yeah, you wanted to go to a particular
But
area?
is an important thing there about the copyright now in the song for the songwriter,
Yeah.
the music being played in public.
Yeah.
Because the person who has copyright has a lot of rights, about 16 of them different things. The right to reproduce the song. That is to say, reproduces in any manner or form. Okay, you have to get the permission of the
Owner
of the owner. Okay. Yeah.
So anyone wants
important word that you made there, owner, rather than just say author, because the owner might not be the author, because the author might have transferred the ownership to somebody else, which is often done in the music business, where the person who writes the song transfers the ownership of the
song
in the song
to the singer
to a music publisher.
Okay.
And let's discuss what a music publisher is.
Yeah.
Everybody knows books. They went to school and they had books and so on. The books we had in school usually, if anybody remember, they would see Macmillan.
Yeah.
Was one of the popular publishers of books for schools.
Yeah.
So they put the book together, print it up, and sell it. They don't themselves write the book. The authors write the book. And if you look in the book, you'll see who the author or authors are. Okay, but they are the publishers. So the writers of the books have transferred their own copyright to the publisher on conditions. There's a long document, say how and when you'll pay and this and that, and depending on blah, 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 etc. Everybody signs. So there is a transfer of ownership. So Macmillan is the one who owns the copyright in the book. So in the same way, in the music business, when you sign a music publishing contract with a music publisher, you transfer the rights, basically all the rights in the music, to the publisher. Subject to one right which is assigned to a copyright management organization, which is usually the right of public performance of the music. Okay, so that's how it's set up. But this is where and why is there but I said collective management organization involved. It's involved because when you wish to play music according to the law, you should seek the permission of the owner. Now your radio station. It's not 10 songs you want to play. You want to play 10,000.
As many as possible.
Yeah, in a year, usually, a radio station will usually play 50,000 songs. Yeah? Okay. But you can't realistically or economically find the writer or even the
50
publisher
owners, 50,000 owners.
Right, to get permission
For all their songs.
for each song. Okay? So since 19, no, not 19, no, actually 1851, I'll tell you this story in 1851. It's in France. They had the same set of rights, including the right to play the music in public. These two composers of music went to a restaurant called Les Ambassadeurs in Paris, and they had dinner. Then the owner of the restaurant, of course, sent the bill. It so happens that the owner of the restaurant had a band playing in his restaurant, and they played some music that was written by those guys. So the guy said, "Hold on there, we are paying no bill for dinner because you may pay us and ask us permission to play our music." To which, of course, the restaurant owner says, "Well, I didn't tell them what music to play, and in any case, I paid them to play, and that's it." Blah blah blah. So a little contretemps came up between them, which ended up in court. The court said that the composers were correct, that they according to the law, the restaurant had to get the permission to play the music in the restaurant, even if the musicians had bought the sheet music, which was put on sale by the music publisher, right? Because that's what at the time you didn't have recordings. Okay, so if you want to know how a song went, you had to go buy the sheet music, and everybody who played music more or less had to know how to read. So you bought it and you read it just like you'd read a book and then you play according to the thing. So the composers got a share of the sale of that music there. So the musicians, of course, want an impression. Well, I paid for the sheet music and I buy it to play. Why should there be any other further fee? Okay? Anyway, ended up in court and the court agrees with the composers. So the composers say, okay, right now it's clear that people have to ask us permission to play our music. However, Paris is, well, at the time it had less population, but it was a fairly big city. Even in Paris itself, they would have the greatest difficulty finding out who is playing their music where and so on and so forth. Not to mention the reverse. The persons who wanted to have music played, for them to go and find all the people,
the owners of all the
where they are, get their permission. That would be a
tedious,
very tedious thing and expensive. Okay, assuming you wanted to stay legal. So there had been since 1791, after the French Revolution, an organization that was set up is now called SACD, Society of Authors and Composers of Dramatic Music. Say people who wrote musical plays for stage, right? That set up an organization to do that for them. So the composers said, well, why don't we do the same as these other guys? So they set up an organization in 1851 called, lots of people in Dominica are members of that organization, so they know the name, SACEM, which is the Society of Authors, Composers, and Publishers of Music, right? So all the people who have these rights and copyright for the public performance part, they give the right to SACEM. So they transfer the ownership of the right of public performance to SACEM, which means that they themselves cannot give permission for their music to be played in public as long as they are members of SACEM. So SACEM is the one that would give the owner of the restaurant, the license, and so on. And since it's one organization, the restaurant owner knows where to go to get the permission to have people play music in his place. Yeah.
So then normally you would have representatives of those various companies, copyright companies
Yeah,
in
sure.
various jurisdictions
Yes.
to actually calculate and to pick up the rights. Let's say Dominica, you are one of those
Well,
agents.
we jump a little too
Okay.
far, too
Okay.
quick.
All right.
So it exists in France.
Yeah.
However, all the copyright laws in the country that were existing at the time said that we protect people who are in our country.
Yeah.
Okay, you could be, especially most of whom would be our citizens, but also people who are immigrants or whatever who are in your country, you protect them. But people's music who are not in your country, you don't protect them. So here comes a good opportunity. If you are in France, for example, you are protected by French law, but a music that comes from England is not protected in France. So therefore, you can play the Frenchman music and you're not breaking any law. Okay? Or the Englishman, sorry, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay. So therefore, they said, well, that kind of doesn't make sense because music doesn't stay in one place. So we have to have a method by which the whole world, if you like, music is protected all over. So in 1886, they had a meeting in Geneva, and Bern actually, not in Geneva, in Switzerland, but it's not in Geneva, in Bern. That's the tongue in which they had it, which is the tongue, by the way, in which Einstein was working in the intellectual property office as a patent examiner. So they had the meeting in 1886, form a union for protection of copyright internationally. So essentially, all countries who join up to that agreement essentially say, we will protect in our country the works of all the other people who are members of this treaty.
Yeah.
Yes, so therefore, you have a international protection.
Yeah.
Okay,
So no matter where,
America,
as long as you're registered, no matter where music is played,
right,
you are protected.
right. America couldn't join
Mm.
because America's law was too backward.
At the time.
Okay, because the Berne Convention had a certain set of things that your law had to have. One of which was you should have no formality for you to enjoy your copyright. You simply made it, and copyright should exist immediately.
Yeah.
Two, your copyright had to last for the life of the person who wrote the copyright thing, plus 50 years. American law said you have copyright, but you have to register it at the copyright office. And if you put it on sale without registering it, you give away the copyright. Okay, and on top of which, the copyright was valid for 28 years, and then you could renew it for another 28 years, and then that's the end of it. It's now free for everybody to use. So they couldn't join the convention. So they were not members of the convention until 1980 or thereabout. Yeah, because now WTO thing comes into place. So that's the basis of it there. That's the basis on which the whole thing works.
So then, like I said, you now are an agent,
right? So
or
so,
a representative.
Right. So this is how it went. In 2014, PRS was established. Okay, so it now there's an organization.
PRS would be associated
in the
with
UK,
more UK.
In the UK, right? After they passed the 1911 Act, which is one of the more modern copyright laws at the time in the world. Yeah, it was very forward, which is, by the way, still the law in Israel.
Wow.
With amendments. So that became the law in Dominica in June of 1912, the 1911 Act of the UK, because the way it was done to extend to all His Majesty's dominions.
And Dominica obviously
was part of His Majesty's dominion.
Yeah.
So we had the law since 1912. We had to do a little thing in our little House of Assembly to make it the law. So we have a copyright law since 1912 in June. I can't remember the exact date, but in June 1912. Okay, so
but it was modified, Mark,
Yeah.
recently.
It was modified recently.
Because what I want to get
The
to.
reason it was modified
Mhm,
is because of the World Trade Organization.
mhm.
So the you see, Mr. Trump is having this tariff business there and so on there. The whole trade organization, the whole point of it was to eliminate tariffs on trade in goods between countries. And then somebody says, oh, by the way, but some people don't really have much goods to trade, but they have intellectual property to trade.
Yeah.
Therefore, in the agreement, we must make provision for intellectual
Intellectual
property.
property.
So there's a section of the WTO agreement that is called the trade related aspect of the intellectual property system. In there, it said if you want to be a member of the WTO, you have to join the Berne Convention
Yeah.
and follow its rules, except Article 6 bis, which is a little complicated. But forget it.
Dominica is
Right.
affiliated
So
to Hope.
Dominica, right. So when Dominica became independent, Dominica is now a country.
Yeah.
Dominica is not any longer bound by the Berne
Berne
Convention.
Convention.
Okay, so we had to join the Berne Convention, and we had to join the Berne Convention because we wanted to join and be part of the WTO, so we could continue selling bananas.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
So we became a member officially, Dominica as a country, of the Berne Convention in 1999. We signed up to the treaty. Yes, which then meant that Dominica now protected every piece of music that's made anywhere in the world of which the country was a member of the Berne Convention, essentially everybody. And by that time, America had to change their law so that they could join the Berne Convention too. Yes, so we protect American
So right
music
now
here.
we are affiliated and endorsed or originally and officially by the
Right,
Berne
right.
Convention.
So this is how the thing works. A
Mm.
radio station, it's
Uh-huh.
in Dominica. It might play mainly Dominican music, but it
Yeah.
need not play mainly Dominican. You can play any music you like,
Yeah.
okay? Because, for example, most radio stations in Dominica are not who play music are not what you might call thematic radio stations, where there are some places that have, they only play classical music from
I
Europe.
know.
You know, all the long people who like to that music, just listen to that radio station. You have
Yeah.
a radio station, they only play rock, bap, 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 bap. Even in Jamaica, they tried a radio station that only played reggae.
You'd have in Guadeloupe Bell Radio plays
Right.
kind of old or
Right. To
retro
specialize.
retro
Right.
music.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would get you need a license to play the music. Now, since there are these organizations, so let's just to simplify it, let's say each country has an organization that works in that country. So there is one in Japan called Jazz Rock. I mentioned Japan because Dominican musicians I know have received money from Japan.
Wow.
Yeah, okay, because their music got played somewhere on the radio. I even got music a couple cents on streaming thing from Russia and Ukraine
Wow.
during the war.
During the war.
Yeah, 29 cents euro cents in total.
Wow.
But anyway, so the idea is the country in which that has an organization operating signs these contracts with all the other organizations to say, I will represent you where I'm operating, and it will be delineated and spelled out in the contract, and you will represent me
Yeah.
in your country there. So the whole idea is if a song is from China, because China is part that has a society, MCSK, they have one in Hong Kong called Cash.
Yes. Wow.
Composed under the Society of Hong Kong. So the acronym is CASH. Okay, there's money they're looking for.
Yeah.
So when the DBS radio or Q95 will play a
song.
record or wish to play a record, they should seek a license from the organization that operates
In the jurisdiction.
in the country. So if you're in Dominica, the organization that does that used to be Pure Human Rights Society up to 2008. In 2009, it's ECHO, which is a organization that's formed in the OECS. So its headquarters in St. Lucia. and I'm representing them here in Dominica as the agent to give their licenses and so on. I used to be the chairperson of ECHO for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
Right. I was also president of the Association of Caribbean Copyright Societies, which includes Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, OECS, and Belize. Yeah. So I was the president for 2 years.
So a radio station would require a license
Yes.
from you
From me in Dominica,
in Dominica.
to play any music
Any music.
at all. So we would give them the license, which is basically a contract that says you can play any music that we control. You have to just do two things: tell us which music you played, and give us a sum of money based on the amount of revenue you collected. Okay?
So whether the revenue is in relation to the music or not,
the revenue
nothing
is
to
in
do with that.
relation to the music. So it's
let us suppose
we charge
go ahead.
2.5%. In my opinion, too low. I'm gonna tell you why it's too low. 2.5% of your revenue. Okay, so if you make $1 million, 2.5% would amount to $25,000. I make the calculation already. And then, so you give us $25,000
from their gross.
Yeah, 2.5% from your from your gross. So you have to send us your revenue
Your statement,
figures, right? We're not interested in your full statement of your expenses and so on, just that. Okay, so because that
your gross,
that is the
it
basis.
calculates your 2.5%, and then you send that.
Right, then you send the an invoice, because if you might make $1 million this year, therefore your 2.5% makes $25,000. Next year you might make only $800,000. Therefore 2.5% is less than about maybe $20,000 or something. Okay, so it follows your but if you don't have to adjust each year because it's a percentage of your revenue. So if your revenue goes up significantly, then the 2.5% will go up significantly relative to the previous.
Okay, let's go to some practical situations. Let's say organizations like the World Creole Music Festival.
Sure, they pay 5%.
We have they pay 5%.
Yep.
Why
concerts? Right,
for concerts? So
right.
Concerts in general,
Yeah,
all promoters pay 5%
Yeah.
of their gross.
Yes, right.
And no matter whether you just have, like for instance, the Calypsonians.
Yes.
Who normally have their own local calypsos, and let's say local calypsos, and no DJs in between, they still have to pay that 5%.
Yeah. Because, for example, we just talk about Pat Aaron. Pat Aaron is a member of BMI. We represent BMI music in Dominica.
Okay, so he's writing the songs that he wrote.
Yeah, Ian Jackson is a member of ECHO directly. He used to be a member of PRS. Hunter, who writes some of his songs, is a member of PRS. So we actually are the ones who can authorize.
So what about all the promoters, Mark? All the promoters,
all the promoters
of all the fets, and
they should get
a license.
Yes.
Are they cognizant of the laws, and are they?
Well, that's why
compliant?
we make lawsuits. That's why we make lawsuits, because I try as much as possible to, like being here today. I mean, to talk about that, right? So and I to take our legal action, because the only way you can protect that kind of property is with legal action, the court. Because unlike, for example, your car, okay, if you think people might steal your car and so on, you have a key, you lock it up. If you figure people might still come in your yard and take it, you build a big wall. So you can take those kind of measures to protect your physical property. But intellectual property is just a right to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, which you cannot protect by any wall. So that's why you go to court to complain.
Can
the court would give us.
Let's suppose a promoter is defiant on accessing a license, and you are aware the event is being promoted, and you approach the promoter to pay his license and to be clear, and he decides, or as a matter of fact, he decides he doesn't want to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Can you put an injunction?
Yes.
On that particular show to prevent that show from happening?
No. Let's explain what the injunction is. Most people think that injunction tells the promoter, don't put on your show. That's not what it says at all. It says do not use the people's music to put on your show. So if you can put on your show without using the people's music that they're in charge of, you go straight ahead. You will not be disobeying the injunction. Okay, so that's what it says. Okay, problem is, of course, because we control such a vast repertoire of music, it's kind of pretty hard for you to put on a show or a concert or dance or whatever there without playing one or two songs that we do control. And, except, of course, if you make your own song and just keep it playing all night.
And just for clarity, the artist,
Which artist? The performer.
the performer
on the stage.
on the stage,
Yeah.
has no obligation to, let's say, to mediate and say,
No.
well, on my behalf, I give that promoter
No.
an opportunity. No.
No, because when he became a member, at least in most other parts of the world, you become a member, you transfer the ownership of that right to the organization. So even if you yourself are putting on a concert, the fact that you're a member of the society does not exempt you from getting a
Yeah, because that
license.
is where I was coming. You have your own concert.
Sure.
Your okay, let's say Dice. Dice
Sure.
is having a performance. Party Run and Dice in compliant with, it's their music. It's Party Run's music.
Right.
Dice is performing.
Okay, so hold on. So part is part of the organization
Part
of the event.
Part is okay, Mascap.
Right.
So owned by, let's say, Party Run and the team Bob.
Right.
And yeah, I prefer to use the tent. Let's say the tent is having the event, and the songs are written by members of the tent.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and they decide they want to put on their own activity. Do they have to seek a permission for that?
Yes, because among other things, I just tell you there, in most parts of the world, including ECHO and the UK and so on, in America, a little different. You transfer the right to authorize public performance to the society. So it's not your property anymore. It's the property of the society. So if you yourself are playing it, you have to get permission. Well, and here's the other thing. It's very, very, very hard for a composer to put on a show or whatever it is, and only his music is going to get played there.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the other persons...
You may have guest artists.
Right, who are not part of your organization. They're not sharing in your profit.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you don't pay them, they can't get their share for the use of their music. Yeah. Because some people have the idea, well, I am a member, I'm putting on a show, therefore I don't have to get a license. Well, no. Because for example, let me just show you an example. If you ask, they're putting on their show there, and then they ask Ophelia to come and sing a couple songs. Okay, and Ophelia comes and Ophelia sings, Marche Contier, well, Ophelia didn't write that song. But she sang Chante-moi doudou, une chanson d'amour. She didn't write that song either. Or you ask her to sing, My soul magnifies the Lord. She didn't write that either. It's all in bully.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ophelia going to get paid for the physical effort of singing. Okay. But the songs she sang, the owners of the song have to get compensated.
And that's where whoever is the promoter of the show needs to purchase a license to give permission.
Right.
Okay.
Be. So Ophelia might sing I Dominic and so on, a few other songs that she wrote all alone. But there are some songs that we wrote, me and her.
Yeah, co-wrote.
Okay. There are some songs that she's written with other persons. Like there's a guy called Steve James in Guadeloupe, who's from Trinidad originally. Actually, there are a couple of songs that Ophelia has recorded that he and she, both of them wrote together. So he's not participating in Ophelia's performance fee. But his song or his portion of the song is used. So his share must be paid for.
This is a very important Creole Heartbeat program where we actually delving into copyright and owners of rights. And
there's something important I would like to say there. When you get permission to do one thing, For example, the radio station gets permission to broadcast the music. That does not give the radio station actually permission to copy the music from a CD into their computer. So the radio station has to get another license. Sometimes it's
Okay, okay.
sometimes it's included in the broadcast license, but it's a separate thing.
Saying that way, I mean, we are now into the MP3
Right, sure.
technology.
Right,
Most songs come in MP3.
right,
Most songs come in MP3.
Right.
So they would be, I guess, on your system via
right,
MP3.
right.
Instead of, let's say, the days of the CD, where you would have to copy it to MP3.
Well, if I send it to you, for example, at here, I have a song I have to send to you just now.
Yeah.
Okay. You can, as I said, I can send it to you by WhatsApp. That's why I'm going to send it to you.
WhatsApp.
Well, you don't play the song directly from your phone. You would transfer the
computer.
To the computer. Well, that is
you need a license.
That is a reproduction.
So you need a license to send the phone from your phone to the system.
Yes, so that you can then.
So all DJs in Dominica, they need a license.
Yeah, actually they do.
All people playing music need a license.
Yeah,
transfer music from whatever.
Who are copying music.
Who are copying music from one place to another.
Yeah.
Wow. I was kind of
matter of fact, you actually need a license to do that at your home.
You need a license to do that at your home.
Yeah.
Wow.
But here, important point. In France and most of Europe, I don't think the UK as well, but they when you buy a computer, you actually also pay a copyright fee. Okay, which is included in the price of the computer, because you are going to use the computer to copy stuff. Okay, if you in the days of cassettes and so on, when you bought a cassette, there was a price included in the price of the computer of the cassette. Right, because you're going to copy music. Usually, that's what people copy it to.
Yeah,
and that is called a private copy levy.
Wow.
So for this private copy levy, because strictly speaking, legally, you do not have the right at your home to copy music from a record, vinyl, or whatever, onto cassette or whatever else you want to copy it onto. But since there's a bit of impracticality in making each person ask for a license, they simply say, okay, just tack on a tax on all these things. So it's a tax on hard drives. Yeah.
So the tax itself is on the hard drive. That the copying.
That can be done, because it can be done. Yeah.
I just wanted to remind our listeners.
And then that money is then it will be paid to the Copyright Society, who looks after the right of mechanical reproduction. Sometimes it's the same society, sometimes it's a different society. And they would then distribute that money to the writers of the songs as the record producers as well. There's all this division set up there.
Absolutely. But I just wanted to invite our listeners, Mark, in case they maybe want to ask any questions. The lines are open. You could give us a call at 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, or 616-4257 if you want to interact with Mr. Mark Murray. Live music for Carnival.
Live music for Carnival. Well, it can't be more public than that. I mean, in the street way.
Yes. So and let us start with the on the road bands.
Yeah.
You need a license for that.
Yeah.
All the bars around the city playing music,
yes.
You need a license.
Yeah. Because we have a tariff book, if you like, that's 64 pages long. Okay. Given if you have a store, how much for a bank, how much for a store, how much for a gym, how much for a parade marching around town and so on, etc., etc. So for each kind of use, there is a tariff, which the law requires us to have, to publish that tariff. And the law also says we cannot refuse anybody a license without exceptional grounds. For example, you could refuse your license if you had previously offered your license and you turned it down and refused it. Okay, and then you want a license, and we can then say, well, yeah, last year you did that, blah, blah. If you pay us for last year, we'll give you a license for this year. Yeah, so something like that. But basically, yeah, you have to pay for that.
How do one make money from the copyright?
Well, by exercising and understanding how the money is made in copyright. I remember I said you have maybe 16 different set of rights. The most important one is the right of reproduction. And reproduction is any kind of reproduction. For example, people make advertisements. They take music and they put it in it because the music helps to, enliven the advertisement rather than somebody just talking. Okay, well, you should get permission from the songwriter, sometimes through his publisher, okay, because those rights are not handled by the society.
Okay.
Okay, they're handled by the publisher or the songwriter himself to make the advertisement, to take the music and put it into your advertisement.
Promotion.
Well, since it's a recording you're using, the owner of the recording has rights as well. And one of his rights is the right to not to have his recording copied.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to get two permissions: one from the songwriter, who get it through his publisher, and one from the record company, essentially the person who owns the rights in the recording. So you have to get two permissions. And in Dominica here, we've had actually had lawsuits in Dominica about that because Michael Henderson sued J. Stefan and Company in the early 2000s there for copyright infringement by making an advertisement with a song without her permission. She won the case. Yes, against J. Stefan and Company.
We also heard of one with a major telecommunications company.
You're right. Bob also sued a telecommunications company. They didn't have a trial because they admitted they were wrong and settled before he got to a trial. I've sued a number of people, including CDB. That's the last one I sued.
CDB?
For doing that, yes. Because after Erica, they came to Dominica and they made a video of their activities in Dominica to help, and they decided the music to put in that is I Dominic. Well, here's what happened with the I Dominic thing. Ophelia is the writer of the song.
Yeah.
However, I am the publisher.
Yeah.
Ophelia is the performer on the recording. Yes, the principal performer. Gordon Henderson owns the rights in the recording. Okay? So they infringe the rights of three people. Ophelia as the performer, Gordon Henderson as the record producer, and McCarthy Murray as the publisher who owns the right and can authorize or not authorize the reproduction of the music for that purpose. Okay? So we write to them and they give us back and forth, which wasn't satisfactory to us. So therefore we sued. And at which point in time they come to their senses and offer the settlement.
Okay.
Which was accepted.
Yeah, we were in the area of monetizing, making money from it. Because one of the things
so in point of fact, one of the ways people make quite a lot of money from music is having the music synchronized with pictures to make videos of one sort or the other, and as well as for making advertisements, etc. Yeah, because you and the way you do that is that right is called a synchronization right. In the business, if you're in the music business, you're able talking about the sync right and so on. These are very important source of money. So which comes directly to you, either if you are the publisher or via the publisher. For example, there's a film that was made about Singola Blomquist's father.
We have a call coming in. Okay, let's take a call. Our first call for Mark Murray. Good morning to you. This is Creole Heartbeat. McCaffrey Murray in the building. Good morning.
Good morning. Very educational program.
Thank you very much.
I'm thinking in terms of Felix Henderson comes to mind.
Felix Henderson, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, it's intellectual property making advertisements.
Yeah.
Those recordings are played even after his death.
Yeah.
For advertisement, does the person who uses their voice have any type of intellectual property right that they can claim.
Okay.
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, caller.
Okay. Here's how it goes. The advertisements that Felix Henderson made, copyright exists in them.
Mm.
Copyright was not you. I'm making a little bit of an assumption here. A legal document was not made between Felix Henderson and the person who asked him to make the ad. That's asking Felix to transfer the rights
To
in
them.
it to them. Therefore,
Most times, what happen, Mark, you make an ad and they pay you.
right.
They
Well,
pay you.
they
paying you
they
doesn't
pay.
mean they pay for the rights.
Well, no. All they've paid for is
It's
what
for
is
the
what
hearing.
that is what is called a commissioning fee. And the
Okay.
commissioning fee doesn't transfer any rights to you. There was a case in Jamaica. Everybody know the business Mr. Nassif had, where you could go and pay all your bills.
Yes.
Okay. That business was owned by Grace Kennedy. Okay. Grace Kennedy had been approached by a company called Paymaster to say, we would like to set up this business here in Jamaica. You're a big firm, you have investable funds and so on. We would like you to invest in it with us. Grace Kennedy turned down the offer. So then Grace Kennedy start up the one that Mr. Nassif was operating there. So the person say, oops, but you are using the same idea and so on that I gave you in my document and so on there. And there were two parts to it. One was the actual, how the thing will operate and so on. And then the paymaster engaged a computer programmer to program the software to run the system. Well, that same program was used by Grace Kennedy for their thing.
Wow.
So the people who had asked the programmer to write the program decided they were going to sue the programmer as well. They did, on the basis that the rights in the program, they were theirs because they paid the fella some of money. Well, the company lost because the rights were never transferred to them. So they remain the right and the property of the computer programmer. So the fact that you have paid money doesn't mean you own it.
You own the rights. That should be clear. So in other words, to answer the caller now, Mark,
Right.
it should simply mean that
so if Felix Henderson didn't transfer, and in Dominica it requires a document. Everywhere it doesn't require a document. Dominica, it requires a document to make that transfer.
So the business doesn't have that right.
The copyright belongs and remains with Felix Henderson.
So the business doesn't own that particular advertisement.
No. However, here's a situation where the business would own it. If I had an advertising company and I hire Felix Henderson to make ads for the company, the ads that he make, the rights in it would belong to the company. Yes, because he would be he's an employee.
He's getting a retainer.
No, you're right. No. The law says the rights that are produced by an employee as part of his employment contract, those rights belong to the employer. Okay, so and it would not belong to the person who actually wants the ad done. It would belong to the advertising company.
Quickly, Mark, AI. Copyright those
Well,
days.
here's an interesting thing. Dominica's law, probably in the whole Caribbean, I haven't read all of them on that point there, actually anticipated computer-generated works. Because our law says that copyright exists in a computer-generated work, and the copyright belongs to the owner of the computer. Wow. In America, the way the law is written, it says copyright does not belong in computer-generated works, only works that are created by human beings. Okay? So therefore, there's no copyright for anybody in a computer-generated work, except the portion that you might say a person created with the use of the computer. Right? Antigua as well, because I read in Antigua's law. They have a draft new law, but it's not enforced yet. And it actually says it belongs to the author. It says it belongs to the author. Then it says an author is the natural person who does this, who writes books, who takes photographs, etc. So it says natural person, which means it's something done by a human being. They can have copyright in it. In Antigua, in Dominica, although actually makes provision for the computer generated work to have copyright. And it says who the copyright belongs to. The person who owns the computer.
The person who owns the computer.
Right, that created computer generated
Not the
work.
person that created whatever, but the person that owns the computer.
Yes.
She's working for me, she creates whatever, but it's my computer, I own the rights.
Right.
Okay.
You don't know. Yeah, that's how it goes. A computer generated work. So she doesn't generate the work.
Yeah.
The computer does the work.
Yeah.
And the law defines what is a computer generated work.
Okay.
And it basically is something to the effect that in a situation where it cannot be said that a human being created.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Once you take out the human element.
Right. And the work exists, then the copyright does exist in the work, but the copyright belongs to the owner of the computer.
Photographs, paintings, books.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. So,
I mean, just brief us quickly on photographs, paintings, books.
Well, photographs.
Especially now in the kind of digital age.
Right. Well, there's an interesting thing with photographs. The same thing, it's just like the computer programmer. Unless the photographer transfers the rights in the photograph to you, the fact that you ask him to come and take pictures of your wedding does not give you copyright in those pictures. Okay?
I would do that.
No. However, the law says when a photograph or video, etc., is created for private and domestic purposes, the owner of the copyright.
A caller coming in? Okay, let's take the call.
No, let me just finish that.
Let's take the call and then you just round off with that.
All right.
Good morning to you, Creole Heartbeat, Mark Murray. We deal with copyrights. Good morning.
Good morning to you all.
Yes, good morning, ma'am.
Yes, I guess, Mr. Mark Murray, you have to make the church pay what for Father's Day ad.
Well, yes, actually legally there is no reason why we can't. It's just that we take a decision not to enforce the licensing for the use of music during the church service. But if the church has a fair or some other thing where they collect money,
so
they have a
service is exempted.
Yeah,
during the service,
we choose to do that. However, there's actually an organization called Christian Copyright Licensing Agency International.
Because most of the songs that
they sing, to you what they do. They do license churches. You in some churches you see people displaying lyrics on a big screen, so the congregation
yes.
That is a right, the right of display. Yeah. So they control that right, the right of display. If the pastor or priest copies hymn sheets to give to the they collect that money too.
Also.
Okay, so but and we collect the performance right in the music, but not the copying for these things there and the public display. And they collect quite a bit of money. They operate in the United States because for example, there are these huge churches that like put on what essentially is big concerts, and they have these screens and they can watch and sing a lot. Well, the churches pay this organization for the right to use this music.
You were dealing with photographs a while ago, Mark.
Yeah, so I was saying, so when you take photographs for private and domestic purposes and you pay the person a sum of money, the rights are not necessarily transferred to you unless it's actually, there's a document saying that it's transferred to you and so on. But you will usually mean that you're going to pay more money with the photograph
because
more
normally
money.
What happens is,
however,
I contact you to take pictures of my event.
Well, it depends what event.
Well, let's suppose a jam, any jam,
Okay,
and
that more than likely would not be considered for private and domestic purpose, because here's what it says: if it's for private and domestic purpose, although I am the photographer and I have the copyright, I cannot make it public without your permission, because I made it, and that is based on the grounds of privacy.
Private.
In other words, I took my pictures for my wedding and this and that. I don't
But
necessarily
with public,
want John Brown, whoever, to see me looking too fat in my dress, or my dress too big or too small or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
but
So
that is
you don't
that is
put it
for the
out in the
public.
public. And you cannot, for example, put it in your, if you're a photographer and you have your studio, put it in your showcase and so on to see how, so people can see how great photographs you take. No.
Does an individual have rights to his photograph being taken?
If he's a performer
Well,
on stage.
let's
So, but,
suppose we see some tourists coming.
yeah. Since you're in the street in a public place, blah, blah, blah,
That
they
is
can
okay.
everybody can take your photograph. There's
That's
no,
okay.
no, nothing. However, there is a famous case, Naomi Campbell versus some tabloid in the UK,
Yes.
where Naomi Campbell won a case on grounds of privacy, although she was in public, but she had gone to a rehab center. And the newspaper knew she was, and she came out on the street and they took a picture. And then they put a headline to say Naomi Campbell liar or something like this. Or look, she coming out of rehab, so she just takes drugs. I used to take drugs. Well, she sued, and she won in the first court. The newspaper appealed. They won in the appeal court. And then she appealed to the Privy Council. They still had the Privy Council in the UK at the time. And the Privy Council ruled in her favor that the newspaper invaded her privacy. Because what she went to do there was a private matter. So put in a headline. So the picture itself, by itself, as she's standing in front there, would not have been an invasion of privacy. But when you put the headline together with the photograph, that said, because going to the rehab center is a private matter that she was doing. So you invaded her privacy. So you can essentially take action against a person for invading your privacy. Or if the person, for example, you can manipulate photographs. Okay, so I can take a picture of you in the street, blah, 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 and then I create an ad to promote beer. And I can put a beer in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, then I could sue you for defamation. Because then you're telling people I'm a beer drinker.
Wow.
You follow?
Wow. This one is very common, man. Where people defame people, take photographs of them, and
here's an interesting case which everybody should know. I'll tell them again. They ought to know that. Go check the law. Marina Marshall versus George and others. That's my niece.
Yeah.
Well, they put a defamatory photograph on the internet, sent it to each other by email, or maybe 1,000 people also sent it by email. Well, we just choose arbitrarily one person who we knew was the instigator of the whole thing, and a number of other persons, somewhat at random, and we sue all of them for defamation. And my niece won. And she won the biggest ever judgment in the whole Caribbean for defamation. So don't send dubious photographs or dubious things about people to other people, because you are liable for a defamation for making a publication that is not true and harms the person's reputation.
And you who shares it also become liable.
The sharer of it, because I'm legally we couldn't sue the person who did it because I had no evidence. We had no evidence to prove
who did it. But you have evidence who shared it.
Yeah. Because every computer is connected there, and the internet is very organized. So any email that goes from one computer to another, the information is stored. I can find that long after. Who sent who, which exact computer, what time, minute, second that it was done.
As we wind down, Mark, just 60 seconds, just advise the nation to be compliant of the rights, because these rights, and how can one obtain the laws pertaining to rights, copyrights?
Well, the government website has all the laws of Dominica there. You can go there and look for the Copyright Act number 5 of 2003. That's the law in Dominica. Yeah. Which is actually our law is pretty good as these laws go. in my opinion. Because here's an interesting thing. Most of the countries in the Caribbean require, except Dominica and Trinidad and Tobago, I know, require what they call fixation. In other words, you cannot have copyright in a song that you just create in your head and sing. You have to write it down or record it or something. Whereas our law says, as soon as the work is created, so you can, in point of fact, create a work without it being on any physical medium or at all. So you can, Yeah, which is a good thing because quite a lot of people in like Dominica, Trinidad, Tobago, for example, extempo calypso.
Yeah.
Well, you can write that down before.
Yeah.
Is when you
It's
come
from
on
your head
stage,
to-
stage is depending on what the other person say. You have to make the right response and so on. You don't know what the person going to say. You might
So after
look.
you finish, that's your right. That's your
No, no. As soon as you do it, the right exists.
the
Bam.
right exists. Okay, Mark
Mhm.
Marie, this one. By the way, have you lost any copyright cases?
No, I do about
Okay.
60 of them. Yeah, no,
60
yeah,
copyright cases, you want all.
yeah.
This was a very important program where we actually delve into copyrighted engage. Mr. Mark Murray was an expert, and he actually, informed us of our rights and tried to break down the whole copyright issue and the myths surrounding copyright. I hope you did get some an opportunity to be educated on this very important subject. And Mark, we may have to do something because it's quite a bit of messages. It's quite a bit of messages coming in, but we could not delve with it with
Yeah.
so much information. So we may have to do a part two because it is important to we need to know,
Well, well,
especially
well,
with
well.
we producing music, we consuming music. We didn't even talk about the businesses and how they have to maneuver and advice to them. All the bars around those days, the amount of rum shops it had. You know what I mean? We need to. We will really-
Actually, don't frighten the people. The fees for those things are actually quite small.
Yeah, but then a
Yeah.
fee is associated, and when there is a $5 fee that's
Yeah, but
associated
here,
those days.
here's what is interesting there. No, Dominica's music is again actually Dominica is the most dynamic music sector in the Eastern Caribbean. We are the ones who come up with all the new styles and new beats and so from
Mm.
soca to booyah, etc. Right? But the Dominican musician people, music fraternity, they're not going to benefit as much as they could benefit because they don't know how the music business works. And I'm trying to work with Dexia and the
Mm.
cultural division to put together a music business seminar. So it will be about mostly about a lot of it will be about copyright, but it will be gone beyond a little bit and just
Business.
copyright is the business of music, how it works and how you make money in it and so on.
Well, let's do that.
And it has
Let's prelude it here on a Creole Heartbeat edition, and then we can actually ask people to register and for what medium. But
yeah,
this
yeah,
was
yeah.
another Creole Heartbeat. Mark, we have to go
When we've
when everything is complete
complete and set up and they have the dates and all of
and
that,
all
there,
that.
then we
Okay.
need to promote it to ask
Absolutely. Because I
people to
think it is
come.
very important that we understand our rights, especially if we intend on building an industry. The news major comes up next on the big station. Very much thank you to everyone who tuned in and who listened to us, and hope you were edified with some powerful and positive information here today. Prince Vadix, may God bless you. Enjoy the weekend.
Prince Vadix, Prince Vadix, Prince Vadix, Prince Vadix. Ako awete ba moun plen la yon manj a kite la vi. Aprisye sa yo kape kon yo apami nou jodi. La se moun ge pale bien non nou ka konsipe moun evi. Pou nou konet pou me yo se pou nou tout sa benefis. For only wonders you done for us, Lord.